All right, what's happening, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to the Aloha Friday show, and I'm your host today because Peter K is out on a adventure, and of course we have our co-hosts here, Ashley Wasson and Heidi Dollinger. Ashley's from Oahu and Heidi's from Maui, and actually we have a special guest today too who will be joining us here shortly, Ronnie Margolis from Kauai. So we'll have the whole entire state represented, but what's happening? Let's get as we do get our microphones warmed up. What's happening, Ashley, over on Oahu?
Should be a rainy morning. I don't know what the weather is like for you guys, but it's rainy and it's a little bit chilly, and I'm whipping out my socks. I love it though. It's great for the garden and the grass, and I like our cold months. This is probably going to be the last cold months that we'll see for some time. So I'm enjoying the rain.
Yes, I was on Kauai on Monday, and it was like way colder than the Big Island for whatever reason. It was weird that it's a different island is different. So, but that's how it is. So,
I mean, it's way colder if you go like to Wahiawa, for example. It's 6 to 8 degrees cooler on average. So maybe the elevation of where you're on Big Island, maybe thicker clouds.
No, it was colder on Kauai than it was on the Big Island when I flew home, and I live at elevation, so it's usually pretty cool. So it was just it was odd. Yeah,
that is odd.
What's happening, Heidi? What's going on Maui?
I'm doing great over here. Yeah, it's a little bit rainy and overcast this morning, but cold here is just below 70 degrees. It's really not cold. Yeah, I was over hiking around Iao Valley on Maui, which is just a really cool place to hike along a stream and be out in the woods, and that was awesome. So super grateful for that. And yeah, just adjusting to our new time since we don't have daylight savings time. The show time changes a little bit, so working on my morning schedule, but happy to be here.
I almost messed that up. I was like totally planning on 10 a.m. and then I was doing some work, and then I looked at my calendar and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's 9. So then that's why I sent the reminder out to you guys, because I was like totally blown.
I just got used to the old time and I had my routine, and now I'm like, oh, okay.
I thought they were getting rid of it. I thought they were gonna be done with the whole time difference. Like, parents, can you imagine getting your babies and stuff on sleeping schedules and then having to adjust? We just have to adjust to the mainland. But these families, I forget what it's like to have to adjust to the actual difference of your children's sleeping schedule.
Yes. And I was actually in Dallas on Monday. And I was Kauai on Wednesday. So I misspoke earlier. I was Kauai Wednesday, but I was Dallas on Monday, and it was Sunday night is when daylight savings time changed. And I went to a gym in the morning, and I showed up at 6, but the clock on the wall said 5. And I'm like, I wonder if they're not opening because it was just the clock didn't reset. But I was like, did I screw this up? Because we don't deal with daylight savings time, so I never factored that into account. But it worked out. So everybody was there, and it was all good. So, all right, here's Ronnie. Ronnie's joining us. Ronnie, welcome. Just in time.
That's how I do my hair, Ashley.
Oh, I need to take some tips. I like your haircut better.
Oh, it gets easier at this point.
So this is not Ronnie's first time on the show. He's been on, I think, one time before, Ronnie, or has it been a couple times?
One time.
So if you guys have any questions for the Kauai expert, Ronnie is on today, and he'll add his thoughts on the rest of the stuff that we're talking about. But it looks like it's 9 a.m., so we're going to get rocking and rolling here. So let me see if I can do these slides right. All right, here we go. So this is the Aloha Friday Hawaii show. If you guys have any questions, just pop them in the chat. I'm going to do my best to monitor here and answer those questions. I mentioned earlier, Peter is on a trip with his family for this week, and so I'm taking over the hosting seat this week, and I'll do my best to fill his large shoes. But the first thing, as we always do, is the Hawaii news. This is the agenda, the Hawaii news. We're going to do the market update. We're going to take your questions. We got our diamonds and deals, and we got our closing thoughts at the end. So the first thing is on the Hawaii news. There's a couple of things that are happening here in Hawaii, but the big thing we're going to talk about is some breaking news that came out this morning. But the first thing is Hawaii judges. This is an interesting thing about Hawaii the Hawaii legal system is our judges are appointed, but they must retire by age 70. And so it's somewhat ironic that we age discriminate against our judges, but that's how they keep new blood going in, because there isn't any election process or anything like that. You get appointed until you're 70, regardless of what your age is when you start. And so there's some discussion about increasing that to 75. And so we'll see if that passes the legislature. There's another big Hawaiian homes project here on the Big Island that's being proposed. This is something that has always been, if you're familiar with that program in Hawaii, it's a program for people of Hawaiian ancestry to get homes on leased land, 99-year leases. And it's always been a problem in terms of a backlog of people and demand to use that benefit, and the state never funds it fully. And so there's a big project here on the Big Island that's proposed that would definitely help with our woes here in terms of the housing prices and availability. One big story that's near and dear to our heart here on the Big Island and in Kona particularly is the Kona coffee issue. And so this is continually for 12 years. We've been talking about doing some type of regulation in terms of the marketing and use of Hawaii terms in coffee naming. So Kona coffee is the biggest name, but now we have Maui coffee and Kauai coffee and different brands, and there hasn't been any regulation on how much or how little you have to have in the blend in order to use the name. And so it looks like finally that regulation is getting some traction, is going to pass. So we'll see how that ends up at the end of the legislative year. There's a huge battery plant being put in on Leeward, Oahu. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Ashley, or any other information on that, but this is part of the state plan to be 100% renewable by 2045 or 2050, I think it is. But definitely that's going to be a component that's going to be needed if we are ever to reach that goal. But any thoughts on that, Ashley, on the battery storage over on Oahu?
I mean, I'm kind of conflicted on the whole thoughts of battery, to begin with, just especially the amount of natural resources that's used to get the components to build the batteries. I feel like they're just taking, one evil and replacing it with another. But I think it's essential we do something. We do keep losing power. I'd say like this year, we've lost power more times this year, and we're only in March, than we did all of last year. Or at least I've experienced that here personally on Kailua. So I am happy something is going to be done. As far as if it's more economic, or environmentally sound, I think that's up for debate.
Absolutely. There's always a cost, right? Nothing's free. So, all right. And then the big breaking news, guys, and we're going to spend some time talking about this up front here because it just came out this morning. And obviously, this is something we talk a lot about real estate wise on the show, but this has been a thing we talked about a couple of shows ago. And there was a big announcement this morning that the National Association of Realtors is proposing a settlement to the verdict that was decided a couple of months ago. And I took some screenshots here of some headlines that are out there, which I'd like to start off by clarifying are very, very misleading. And of course, these are the headlines that get clicks. But from CNN, the 6% gross commission on buying or selling a home is gone after Realtors Association agreed to a seismic settlement. So that's not necessarily the case, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then Powerful Realtor Group agrees to slash commissions to settle lawsuits. And so that's another, I think, misleading, and I'll get you guys' thoughts on this headline.
I thought it's going up to 8%. That's why they said that 6% is gone.
Right.
They want to give us all a raise.
Exactly. Yes. So this is what was actually proposed. So let's go through this real quick, and then we'll have some discussion about it. The first thing is obviously a release of liability. Anytime you do a legal settlement, that's what you're looking for, right? Is no more future liability. And so that's the first thing that's proposed in it. The second thing is compensation offers will be moved off the MLS. This is where these headlines are coming from. And just for background and context, right now, an offer of compensation to a buyer's agent is posted on the MLS. After the settlement, they removed the requirement that it be a dollar amount. You could offer zero. So we've been practicing that business practice for a few months already, but basically you will not advertise what the potential buyer's agent commission is on the MLS according to this settlement. And then written agreements for MLS for participants acting for buyers. This is something that's been a smart business practice for decades. It's not a new thing, but it would more require that if you are a buyer, you will sign a written agreement with your agent that details compensation before you work with them. And this is depending on your experience, very common on, I mean, it's required on the listing side, right? We sign a listing agreement with a client, and then there is a clear compensation structure attached to that. On the buyer side, it's not as common, but this is something that going forward, we're going to have to look at implementing and using, is that if you are working with an agent as a buyer, you'll sign an agreement similar to a listing agreement that details your relationship and your compensation. Heidi just messaged me that she lost power, so we're going to keep going. This is a live show, and hopefully she can make it back. And then
the irony, we just talked about losing power.
Yes, that's funny. Yes, exactly. Just talked about our woes about power in Hawaii, and then
Apparently they need a power plant on Maui too.
yeah, more batteries. They need more batteries. I was just totally aside, but I was flying into Maui the other day, and my friend that was with me was like, "Man, those windmills are so ugly." Going up the ridge line, and it goes back to your point, Ashley, about there's always a cost, right? Like you want renewable energy, and then in order to have that, you need these massive, ugly windmills on this beautiful ridge line as you fly into Maui. But anyways, aside from that, we'll go back to the lawsuit here. The big one is a settlement payment. The NAR would pay $418 million over 4 years to settle the lawsuit. That's a huge cost that they don't have the money for, and so it'd be interesting to see if that if our fees or where that money is going to come from. That hasn't been determined yet. And then of course NAR continues to deny any wrongdoing. This is not an admission of any type of wrongdoing or commission setting or any conspiracy to charge sellers more than is necessary. So what are your guys thoughts on this? Any initial reaction to this proposed settlement?
Well, I think for realtors, and this is a professional industry, right? We talk about our doctor and their practice, our attorneys and their practice, our realtors and their practice, and we're all in different professions and we're all practicing to get better. And, I was on a webinar just before our show with Lawrence Yoon, the chief economist of NAR, National Association of Realtors, in eXp World. And, he was just citing all these stats, but 90% of the people that do real estate transactions, and we're talking about millions of homes, choose to use a realtor. And so we all know that these kinds of transactions may be the largest, business purchase or investment in anyone's life. So the way the market's going to shift is the first volley, if you will be to the seller. Do you want to compensate the buyer's agent? It's not mandatory, right? It really has never been mandatory, and I think that's NAR's position. But would you like to do that? And if the seller says no, then it may bounce back to the buyer. And the buyer, may participate, and time will tell how it flushes out, right? I mean, the 10% that want to sell it by themselves, they're looking to cut out the seller's commission. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know what the numbers are in terms of the satisfaction ratio, but, realtors are trained. We go through tons of continuing education. We're skilled in negotiation. We handle a transaction. We work as their advisor, their negotiator, manage the fiduciary responsibility, handle hundreds of emails and texts and everything during a transaction. And I don't think most people buying a home, are overwhelmed by the process. Imagine if they had to manage all that. So,
absolutely.
I don't really see much changing. In our industry, there are agents that charge 7%. Because they do even more, and they spend even more marketing, or they help with renovations, whatever. So those are my thoughts.
I like it, Ashley.
I think it's a can of worms of a conversation. so to speak. There's several thoughts. I personally am in a transaction right now that's a long arm's length transaction where a family member is purchasing the home from another family member. And it's so challenging for the lenders and the people that are in the transaction to facilitate this without having a realtor. And so it was presented to them, do you want someone to help you guys facilitate this paperwork? And these are savvy individuals, but people have jobs and they have lives and they have a lot going on, and they just don't think of all of the details that are involved. And they chose to have me represent them in their family transaction. And so we had to have a discussion of who's paying what. And I think that was a testament to show the value of what agents can bring, that even in a family transaction where you don't have to worry about not having access to the property or negotiating the hard things, everyone's very, compliant through the whole process. They still see value in representation. And I have another example too, where I get a call from someone yesterday that they are involved in a transaction with a friend, and they put in a offer on their neighbor's property across the way. And this will be a similar layout to what it's going to look like in the landscape of the MLS even, because this is an off-market example. And they put the offer and they present it to the seller, and the seller said, you know what, I want representation, but I don't want to pay for your representation. And now I'm going to bring a realtor in. And they brought in a discount broker. And this discount broker has a very poor reputation and a high litigation rate, and they're well known for it. And this broker said, you know what, we're going to draft your contract for you because the seller doesn't want to pay buyer's agent. Buyer has no funds, no additional funds outside of their closing costs and their down payment. And now the buyer is in a either dual agency situation with a flat rate broker who has a high litigation rate and or no representation at all. And they feel extremely vulnerable. They are really torn on what to do because they really want this house, but they really want to be represented. They don't trust, this agent on the other side. They did their research. And I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see more of that in the day to day. So our jobs are going to get a bit more challenging. And I think we've said this before, that the savvy are just going to get savvier. They're going to have the ability and the willingness to pay for representation. And the first-time home buyer is someone who's a bit more novice or confident in their abilities or not. And I think litigation is going to go up. I think the litigation landscape is going to change from our compensation to, suing seller or buyer for non-performance or for non-disclosure items, because they're not going to have the same guidance. And then I also wonder, what is our liability to our duty to our buyers if the sellers are not willing to compensate and the buyers aren't able to? So where is our responsibility on facilitating a contract if there's no compensation to cover any costs if there was liability and stuff? So open-ended, but I think it's going to be fine. I think when you have a great agent, you're going to persevere. And if you're always sharpening your skills, you will stand out from the crowd. And I just think it's going to make agents level up to provide more value for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm in a situation, similar situation right now, where it's family member buying for family member, but they felt like it was too complicated to do it on their own. So they retained us to help them do that process and just facilitate the paperwork and advise them on the process. But that's I think there's a lot of people that definitely understand that. What worries me is that, and this is what matters to consumers, right, is that the consumer who thinks they can do it on their own, the consequences are so high to learn that lesson that it's not a good idea. And unfortunately, like what you're talking about, actually, about, you could end up in a lawsuit or have some huge costs, and maybe you'll learn your lesson and never do it again. But the cost of learning your lesson is extremely, extremely high. And that's the thing that really worries me in the short term, is if this becomes prevalent or more prevalent than it already is, because it has been going on for years. This is not a huge change. If you want to sell your property on your own, you absolutely can. If you want to buy a property without a representation, you absolutely can. But when you get into a problem and there's consequences, it's not, it's a very high dollar transaction, a very high dollar consequence. So
and that's the thing that confuses me, is that you still can buy a property with no representation. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go through an agent. You don't have to sell your property through a full commissioned agent or full service agent. You can go to a discount broker. So really, this litigation and this, argument is so null to me, because It's a choice. You're choosing who you are listing with. And most people have chose to work with a full service broker who has good marketing. Why? Because they're in front of their face more often. Why are they in front of their face more often? Because they have brand, because they have marketing. Why do they have that? Because they have the pockets to do so. And they do the same thing with the exposure to your property. Versus the agents who are the discount brokers, they don't have a lot of exposure. So a lot of people aren't even aware that they exist, but they do. And they're stating, like in the lawsuit, in the article, they were stating that the accusations that some buyers agents were steering prospects towards more expensive homes to get a higher commission rate. I mean, it's so fractional. If you get a slightly higher price property, the commission is based off of a percentage. You don't get an exorbitant amount of commission more. It's acting as if you're increasing people's buying power by 500,000. One, we can't increase their buying power. And two, like the lender, the buyer, and the agent are all responsible for having conversations about what they can afford. And I think that is, again, a very inflated viewpoint of the conversation because of a 2-year window of COVID, which was an unprecedented time in the market where people were throwing everything in the kitchen sink at trying to get into a property. And now some people regret it. And they're acting as if this has just been this ongoing issue just in real estate as a whole. Sorry, Ronnie, I didn't mean to interrupt you. My very long-winded. I didn't breathe, so it's considered one sentence.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, very long run-on sentence. It reminds me, I think it's in this webinar I just attended with Lawrence Yoon. He talked about, when the market goes down. And by the way, this last year was like, he was making the point that in 2023, it's the fewest amount of transactions we've had. And he had this graph, and it showed the number of homes sold going back to like 1990 or something. And he made this point that the same amount of homes that sold this year are the same amount of homes that sold in 1993. But the population in the U.S. was 240 million in 1993, and it's 360 million now. And, sort of postulating what's that about, or just saying, it's only going to go up from here. But I liken, what I said earlier. If I go into a doctor for surgery and it's going to be $42,000, do I say, can I get a discount on that? Can you give me a break? No, it doesn't exist in that world. But people in our world, they look for it, they anticipate it, they expect it. And so there will be some people, kind of like the headlines in CNN, were like, oh, I don't have to pay it. And then it'll come down to what Ashley said. Do you want a professional? Do you want this, do you find value in that? And so realtors are going to be tasked to demonstrate that they provide value. And like both of you said, if someone says, well, I don't see the value and I want to save the money, then, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, as the Latin phrase goes.
And I think we'll see the litigations to that in 5 years. I think people will experience the negative impacts of this. I think they're going to be like, yeah, we won. You took it to them. They, and because people like to complain and they don't like when people win or make money or whatever it might be. And their misconception that realtors are all wealthy. I mean, the statistics, Dylan, Ronnie, you probably know them better than I do, but I think
it's like average is like less than $40,000 a year is like the average income. So
below minimum wage. You have
yeah.
2 to like less than 5% of the licensed realtors are actually making a substantial amount of income that helps them thrive. But most of them are, side jobs, or they're just barely skating by because it's a very, very hard thing to accomplish on volume. And when you do, you have to pay federal tax, state tax. Here you pay GE tax, and then you have to pay self-employment tax. And that comes out to 30 to 38% on average if you are making good money, and then whatever your tax bracket if you're not. And then in addition to that, you have broker split fees because the brokerage has to keep their lights on as well. And then you should reinvest it into yourself with marketing and appearing nice. Because if your realtor shows up and holes in their clothes and their car doors falling off, you're going to be like, are they okay? Can I trust them? So there's this misconception that realtors make so much money. And that, I think, is sort of the flame that lights this to make people go against them and want them to dissolve. I
Well,
find
and,
it.
The reality is, we happen to be blessed with an opportunity to work. I'm so sorry, for global brokerage. And that gives us exposure with partners in Canada and 24 other countries to how real estate is done around the world. Hey, I'm on a live broadcast. Please be quiet. And in many countries, there is no buyer representation. That's it. So, I mean, in terms of, be quiet, of us making a living, obviously I go, well, I'm just going to focus on getting more listings. But I mean, that's my focus anyway. But, say it moves to that. Well, we just do the work that we do. And I think, sort of the culture of America, people are acclimated to, you get what you pay for type of thing, right? So it's a paradigm shift, and I'm sure it will accelerate the number of realtors that don't renew their licenses, in the coming years, and that's not a bad thing.
I don't want to stay on the topic for too long, but to your point that in other countries they don't have buyer representation, we are the most litigious country. So there's buyers are not going to be happy. Sellers agents are not going to be able to advise buyers the way that other agents can do in other countries. I was looking to buy property in Greece and it was really complicated. I wish I had someone to hold my hand through the process. But in America, I feel like we are so litigious that sellers agents are not going to walk buyers through the process if they're not getting compensated for the increase of liability. And I wonder what that, we're talking too deep into it.
No, and I think to put a bow on this thing, I think you had a great point, Ashley, that about just, people think, realtors make all this money, but the ones that do, there's some that do, but it's because they have a ton of value, right? And people value their expertise, they value their advisement, they value their experience, and they're being compensated for the value they're bringing to the world. And that's true of any industry. If your restaurant is really, really good, you charge $80 a dinner. If your restaurant's not very good, you charge 15, and the consumer has a choice on where they want to eat. So yeah, it's no different. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's not going to be any huge change to the way the consumer feels the business happen, outside of the fact that we're going to have a clear discussion up front about what compensation looks like, and then inject that into the negotiation in offers. And I think that's the thing that people are worried about. They think that there's going to be no buyer compensation at all, which is not necessarily the case. We're just going to have to include that in our negotiation when we talk to a seller. And from my standpoint, I will advise any seller who's considering to sell property to offer buyer compensation, because your number one most advantageous piece of marketing is the compensation you offer to every buyer's agent in the market. And if you don't do that, and buyer's agents are not calling all of their buyers when your property hits the market to get them to come and look at it, you may be leaving money on the table, more money than the compensation, because you're not exposing your property to the vast majority of people that are out there actively trying to sell it. So that's something that we're just all going to have a conversation with our sellers about. So, all right, moving on. And if you guys have any questions, you always can just pop them in the chat. I'm monitoring that over here. So if you have any questions about this or anything else, just put them in there. But we'll move on to our market updates and go around the state. So let's start at the northern tip with Ronnie. What's happening in the market up there on Kauai? And you're on mute, I believe.
I had my dog filter on.
Yes.
Yeah. We're starting to see a little bit more inventory come into our market. And it kind of edges up a little bit. But as I said before, and I think the last time I was on the show was probably 4 or 5 months ago, it's not significant enough to impact prices, in a way that where the prices go down. So Kauai, like the other islands, continues to be a great place to invest. And the upside, I know was just in this interesting situation, and it's a project. I guess I'll talk about it later. But it's like a 5-star luxury resort. It's the only one on the east side of the island. And prices continue to rise, and all of a sudden there's nothing for sale. So what happens with the next one that comes up? you can guess what happens. So a unit comes up, it goes into escrow for, way beyond asking and a bidding war. And the next neighbor says, oh, okay, let's go a little higher. And so, that's the condition of the market. It's basically supply and demand. A little bit more inventory than we've had. And some areas of the market, I'd say in the million to $1.5 million range. And, on an island where $1 million is the median price, that's kind of where the most amount of business happens. And if I'm a buyer and, I wrote an offer 6 months ago at one point, or a year ago at 1.5 million, when the interest rates were lower, probably a year and a half ago now, and I want to go buy that same house now, the house costs more and the interest rates are higher. I can't afford it. So, those are the market conditions we're dealing with. And I think the creativity of the buyer's agent and the ability to do 3-2-1 buy downs and negotiate is the main way that, buyers can get a property that they love.
Yeah, makes sense. What about you, Ashley? What's happening on Oahu?
So Oahu is picking up. We're seeing lower days on market, or same days on market, to be honest, as last month, but we're seeing properties go at our asking price. Our max is 100% asking price. So for example, you used to have 103% asking price average because people were paying above. So that's the max that we're seeing. So that means people are not paying above the asking price, which is good for our buyer market. In the last 2 weeks since we were last on the show, there's been 261 sales. And to compare that to February, from the 1st to the 15th, there's 235 sales. So it's a small increase, but we're just seeing things go faster, like I said. And we're seeing less negotiation, especially if things have rental or large yards. They're going very fast. Of the 261 sales, 109 of those were single family homes, and 34 of those were under $1 million, and 152 condos. So it was single family homes are right up there with condos. And I thought that was interesting as well, because in comparison to last year, 77 of them were single family homes. And I think this is going to be, the second half of this month is going to be even more active than the first half. And I think it's just going to get a bit more aggressive from here.
That's definitely what we're experiencing on the Big Island. Is the number of sales in February was the highest we've seen in the last 6 months. So the market, it seems like, is getting some momentum, even though inventory has not increased. The number of sales is picking up, which is, again, back to everybody's point, going to continue to drive prices up, because there's not enough stuff on the market, and everything that's on the market is selling quickly. Prices will continue to go up despite the interest rates. And that's what it's feeling like to me, is that the shock of the interest rates are kind of dissipating at this point. Back February of last year, it was we're 6 months into the high interest rate market, and people were really freaked out about it, and the market slowed way down. But now people are kind of starting to understand that this is kind of the new norm for the foreseeable future, is the high 6% interest rate, and they're coming back into the market. So yeah, interesting times.
On
Well,
our next show, we should talk
you've
about
got to do the. Go ahead, young lady.
I'm going to type it so I don't forget. Go.
It's okay. No, a buyer has to do the math. I mean, I think we would all agree that, there's a lot of different reasons, and the numbers in the presentation earlier this morning, of all the people being born, of all the divorces, of all the aging, there's so many, different dynamics that affect properties put on the market. And so there will be more available. I think we can all agree we're going to see a little more inventory this year. But, the economics of the country that we, of course, have no control over, what all the experts are predicting is, rates are now hovering in the high 6s, and no one is expecting them or predicting that they're going to go down into the 5s this year. So if you're a buyer, you're sitting on the fence waiting for that. The delta between the prices that go up while you're waiting and the interest rates you're waiting to go down, you may be waiting for nothing. Obviously that's an individual choice, but it's just something to keep in mind, Maybe next year, we anticipate there will be 3, 4, 5, according to Lawrence Yun, 6 rate drops, and maybe we'll get down closer to 5. But quite honestly, what the industry experts are predicting is the new norm is going to be around 6%, and so we need to adjust, from the expectations of the last couple of years. Basically, we want to buy.
I always remind people I bought my first house. I think it was 2005, and it was like a 6.5% interest rate, and everybody thought that was great at the time. So
Yeah.
it was a norm for a long time. What'd you have, Ashley? Go back to your notes.
Two things, and I don't think we have time because I know everyone doesn't just want to hear about real estate the whole time, but we're all real estate nerds here, so it's probably one of the reasons why you tune in. But I think it would be cool to talk about the Decent, Affordable, Safe Housing for All Act. It's called DASH. It's a Down Payment Towards Equity Act of 2021. And essentially, they're trying to find and propose bills that will incentivize people who currently own a home and want to upgrade or get something larger and give them some type of assistance or a handout of sorts to get them into another house. And now it might be a temporary loan that you have to pay back. It's still a lot of information that's up in the air, but they think that's what we all know is creating a housing shortage right now, in addition to the amount of hedge fund companies and corporations who bought residential real estate. And a lot of people think that this is just a simple housing shortage over people not wanting to buy due to these interest rates, when in reality, I do think that's true. But they came out and they suspected if 22 to 26% of corporations or hedge funds bought up real estate, what would that mean for the average home buyer in today's generation and for current generations? And it would mean by potentially 2040 that it would become nearly impossible to get into home ownership because they would own such a large percentage of the single family homes and have rent control. It came out that they bought 44% of the single family residential inventory in the nation. That is huge. Just type into ChatGPT, what would happen if hedge funds and corporations purchase 44% of the residential market in 1 year? And the results are pretty astounding. So we do know that there's bills to pass to stop hedge funds from buying residential property. But the caveat to that is it's hedge funds when they are using, a lot of corporations are buying this. And that bill does not include corporations, I don't believe. But it would be cool to do a show around it.
Yes, I think, let's put that on the agenda for the next show, because I saw or read or watched a podcast recently with information completely to the contrary, saying that if you look at the number of residential real estate investors, you cannot look at them as an entire class, because like 95% of them are just mom and pop investors that own 1 or 2 houses, like you, Ashley, or like me, and they're not institutional investors. So be interested to dig into some of that data, and we can debate that what that impact is. So
I would really love to do that.
Like, here's another just on this topic is there's a bill in our legislature right now to ban foreigners from buying property in Hawaii. And I asked a couple of my state senator friends at dinner the other night, do you guys know what the percentage is of homes that are bought every year by international investors or foreign investors is? And they didn't know. And I'm like, well, it's been 2% for the last 40 years. Like, it hasn't changed. And so if you ban foreigners from buying property, we're solving a 2% problem. It's not going to have a massive impact. And that's just what the data is. And it hasn't changed. But it's one of those things where it sounds really good, but it's really not going to have a significant impact. It doesn't really change anything. So yeah, interesting stuff. All right, let's move on to what do we got next on here? The station update. So livinginhawaii.com. If you are not signed up at the website for our weekly emails, go ahead and do that. There's tons of information about moving to Hawaii, living in Hawaii. You guys know it's the best resource. And that's one of the reasons you saw the announcement last week that Peter and I put on, that we're taking on, carrying on the torch, is that we want to continue to invest in this resource and be the number one resource for information about Hawaii and living here and being a good steward, and just making your transition as easy as possible. Or if you're already here, making living here more enjoyable. So livinginhawaii.com, go check it out and sign up for the weekly newsletter, and that'll get you the links to this show and the replays if you're not watching this live. So a couple of questions we had. We're going to go back to one of the questions we had last week because we had a follow-up to it. And again, if you guys, anybody online has any questions, just pop them in the chat and we'll go to you guys since you guys are on live. But we had a question about endocrinologists last week, which I didn't even know. When I saw the pre-show slides, I had to go and Google what that even was. And we got some clarification that it's a specialist in diabetes. And so we had a discussion about this. And I guess there was a lack and we couldn't find any here in Kona, but we always go back to this discussion about medical care and limitations on what's available. But I think, Ronnie, what is your take? Because you're on the most the most rural island. I think we could agree upon. And what is your take on specialized medical care on Kauai? And do you know any endocrinologists there?
No, but my next door neighbor just moved here from Southern California, and he is an osteopath, a primary care physician, and a psychiatrist. So he's killing three birds with one stone. I think it's going to continue to be a challenge over time. That's just it's the economics of the islands. It's very expensive to live here. Doctors get paid less to live here, paid less to work here than they would in a major mainland market. And the balance point to that is, you get some amazing specialists and practitioners that want to be here for the lifestyle and they don't care about the money, so to speak. And so, but those are exceptions to the rule. I think I don't know about Oahu because I always look at it like our urban market. And lots of people, when they need an eye specialist or even a catheterization, we don't have that done here with your heart. So if you need that, you're going to one of the big hospitals in Oahu. And that's really our urban market. So if you want that kind of care and you move to the islands, then you need to know you may be taking some trips to Oahu, although Southwest flies you there for $49. Are they one of our sponsors yet? No. We'll need to talk to them. So that's my thought. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, this happens at every level. I've been thinking about my son's orthodontist was from Oahu, and they would fly over here once or twice a week and just book appointments all day and take care of their patients here in Kona. So that's a very common thing. Is not necessarily traveling to the island, but we do have a lot of doctors that do travel to our islands and maintain an office here. Or
and they'll come one day a week or 2 days a month, or we have that.
I know we've talked about this a lot, Ashley. Any other thoughts on
this?
the
bottom line is, when you move to Hawaii, become conscious, leverage the opportunity to eat fresh local produce, get lots of exercise, hikes, be healthy so you don't need doctors, right?
It's great advice. And you're living that life. So that's a credible opinion from Ronnie right there. Anything else on this, Ashley? Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I do know that people come to Hawaii to have an increased quality of life. There's more sunshine, the air is so fresh, and it's not too humid, it's not too dry. There's less species that could kill you. So, I mean, depending on what your health issues are, honestly, living in Hawaii, any island, they all have their special attributes. And if medical care is one of the important things that you need to consider, then become, familiar with the airport and hop over, or move to Oahu instead and have a second home on one of the other islands.
Absolutely. And Jesse just added a comment that Queens medical systems are a great resource. Totally agree. I think they have hospitals or facilities on all the islands, and then you can go in between and get connected to the right folks. So yes, always a concern is the medical stuff. And we don't have the perfect solution for that. But moving on and switching gears to a totally different subject, we got a question about, are there protections for homeowners in Hawaii in the event that squatters take over a home? And my initial, I don't know if you guys have had any experience with this, but my initial answer to it was, it's illegal. You just got to get the police involved. I mean, there's no additional protections that guarantee that this will never happen. Bad people will do bad things. It's not something that I see very commonly. But Ashley, do you have any experience with this or any examples?
So much, because I work in the investor space. I help a lot of people in distressed situations that have, either they had a family member who passed away and they inherited the property and they live on the mainland, or they couldn't afford it, or something happened and they left and they just abandoned the property and it had been taken over by squatters. And it is extremely challenging to get them out of the property. So it's why it's essential in Hawaii to have a representative for any rental or property that you own here on island as a point of contact. So that's required here in, at least on Oahu. And to get them out, it is a procedure. I've worked with the fire department, the police department. All of these agencies do not talk to each other and work together very well. And that's why I will try to get people out of preventative situations to avoid them going into, a vacant home, dynamic. As far as a second home being vacant, and that property is secured by a fence and camera and there's good neighbors around, then that's not as common. But having a just completely vacant property that is not gated, not secured, and looks abandoned, it can happen in certain parts of the island. And to get them out, to answer your question, can take several months. You do have to evict them, even though they're not a tenant. You do have to get the police involved, and then fire department as well, and sometimes CPS, depending if there's children.
My unofficial advice on that is sometimes it's better. I know some uncles that would just visit the house and ask them to leave nicely, or they'll come back later. And a lot of times that's more effective than the police. So just consider that if you know some good uncles that can take care of that. So, Ronnie, what about you? Any
Well,
thoughts?
I don't have any uncles here. Yeah. No, I think that is, I have another word that's not as nice as uncles, but I think that is actually a good resource. My personal experience, 20 years of doing this here now, is that police are there's a line where they don't want to get involved in personal stuff, right? And that might have to do with a spouse or stuff like that. But, and so I kind of had that attitude mostly. But I had a client, bought a home. There were some people squatting there, and he called the police and he told them what he wanted to do. And damn, I went to that house 15 minutes later and there were 6 cars there. And, they gave those people till 5 o'clock to get out of there, and they were gone. So, hey, I think another reason to hire a realtor, whether it's uncles or the police, we have the relationships with the community or know the attorneys. I will say it's really a separate question, but, evicting someone, so not a squatter now, maybe a holdover tenant or something, that's not a fast and easy process in the islands, at least on my island. That usually can take 60 to 90 days.
That's a reason to have a property manager. I always recommend to clients when they want to rent the property themselves, and I'm going to take care of it. I said, if you ever run into it, that 10% you pay a property manager is your insurance policy to deal with all the BS you're going to have to deal with if you run into an issue with a tenant. And the property managers we work with are very good at that legal process with the documentation, filing the stuff with the courts. And so you don't want to have to try and figure that out, because if you miss one thing or you don't do it right, the process starts all over again, or the judge says, you're not, this isn't correct. And then you don't get any progress. And so, yeah, that could be a huge problem. But if you're going to have a rental, you do definitely want to have a professional property manager to help you with that. All right. Any other thoughts on this? We're moving right along. We're doing good on time here. So let's jump forward to our diamonds and deals.
Wait, should you say hi to everyone? Do you not?
Oh, see, okay, good. This is good. So yes, there's a bunch of people yes. So see, this is why we were a team here, right? And I'm not the professional host, but we got Judy, who's always on. What's up, Judy? I know they're making their move soon, so super stoked to have them on. We got Kel on here. Say good morning. Kanaya, who's always on from Austin. How's it going, Kanaya? And then Jesse likes my term uncles. It is a term, it's a technical term. of people who you can get things done in lots of different ways, right? So what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. Let us know if you have any questions.
Go up. We've got Steve, and we got
we got Steve too. Yes. Okay. See, Ashley's helping manage the program here. Steve's on. He's always on from Utah, and then we also have Auntie Joan. What's happening? She's always on to stalwart of the Islander Ohana. So thank you guys. Stoked to have you guys with us this morning. All right, let's go back to our diamonds and deals here. Let's see who's up first. Heidi is gone and never made it back. So I guess the power didn't come back on in Maui, but this looks like a great residence, historic residence, 1.7. I'll talk about it, even though I know nothing about it. But if you want any more information, you know how to get a hold of Heidi. All right, Ashley, you're up.
Okay, so I wanted to showcase this one, even though it's not my listing. It's listed by James Chan at Compass because this is down the street for me, and I obviously have a preference to Kailua. So this is off of Onakea Drive, and it's 1 block from the beach, which is just prime real estate in Kailua. These are old houses, so it depends if you want that more cottage feel or not. There's 2 dwellings on the property with an in-ground pool, and I just love its grassy yard around it. Normally in Kailua, when you have a pool, there's very little space in the yard, or it's not placed in a way that feels, it's very tropical. It might be enclosed, but not where it feels like you have this big, imagine kids like kicking the ball or playing fetch with, your dog on the side, and they're jumping into the pool, and then you just walk to the beach. It's 4th of July. I just love this house. It was such a vibe. And actually 3.4 million is about the going rate for something like this in this area, especially for over 14,000 square feet of land. I love it. I want to be down this close to the beach. So this is a goal of mine.
That's wild. That 3.4 is the.
So you're moving, Ashley? You're moving down to the beach then? You're going?
She's pretty close, right?
So it's only the going rate because it has the 2 structures, the large lot and the pool, and it's 1 block from the beach. Other than that, this would be easily $1 million less. I mean, honestly, I think that there should be a little bit of wiggle room here, but not much. I would love to, Ronnie. I'm on the canal and I like it. There's some distance between the neighbors, but I don't fish because I feel for the fishies, and I don't utilize the canal like I should, but I would walk that beach every day with my coffee. And I used to live on the beach in Hau'ula for years, and I did every single morning. I miss it.
Awesome.
It's my goal. Send me more business so I can do it.
Yes.
Working on that.
All right. Well, we got, this is Ronnie. Here we go.
It's Ronnie to edit. This is the Waipoli Beach Resort. I guess I went to the different slide. I talked about this earlier. It's a 5-star resort, saltwater pools, 3 sand bottom jacuzzis, an award-winning restaurant right on the beach called Oasis on the Beach, built with really high-end materials. You see that picture of the kitchen with a Sub-Zero fridge, a Wolf cooktop, and African mahogany cabinets, onyx backsplashes, granite slab counters. So it is a luxury resort, kind of interesting configuration. The 2-bedroom units have a 3rd bathroom. So when you put a queen sleeper out in the living room, obviously you can accommodate more guests. And this is a really popular place for people that want to live in luxury, part of the year and vacation in it. You can either use Outrigger, who's one of the larger companies in this area of the planet, or, there's plenty of Airbnb, VRBO type owners there that obviously net more money, but they have more responsibility. So this is unit B104. It's listed at 1.379 million, and B103 just recently went into escrow, and it was priced a little bit less.
That seems like a pretty good deal. That seems like a pretty good deal, though. 1.3.
What's the maintenance fees?
The maintenance fees are for the 2-bedroom units, $1,741 a month.
There you go.
Does that include electric?
No, and in fact, this place has central air. You won't find much of that because most of the condos here are older. So a lot of people put these auto sensing units in their condos, right? So that when guests go out, it turns the AC off. but the electric bills can be pretty high. That's curious. I mean, this is probably not your subject for the day, but there's one luxury complex up in Princeville where this whole changing dynamic of the amount of insurance that a homeowners association can get on their properties cost the owners like a $24,000 assessment for the next year. And that's a huge number.
Is that an assessment for that HOA right now? And do they have 100% hurricane insurance?
I don't know the specifics since I don't live there. I don't know that. It's a great question. But it's basically the main fee just is the delta for them to have 100% insurance, right? It's caused by the inability to insure it 100%. Yeah.
That's definitely a discussion topic we've been talking about lately. So maybe we got to add that for the agenda for the next show too, because that's been a big issue recently is insurance.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll reach out to you, Ronnie. I think I have someone who might be interested.
Anytime.
Awesome. All right, and then this is mine, and this is I'm partial to. This is my brother's listing, and it's actually his neighbor. So if you want to live next to my brother in Waimea on the Big Island, this is your deal for the week right here. It's a 3-2 1,600 square foot house, so not huge, but huge yard if you look at that. And this is on the wet side of Waimea, so always green, always lush, but super nice inside, as you can tell from the finishings. But this is about right. Just under $1 million is what it takes to be in Waimea. It's very limited inventory area because it's all surrounded by Parker Ranch and there's never any new development. So whatever is there is all you have to choose from, and there's not a whole lot of turnover. So this is in Pu'unani in Waimea on the Big Island.
What would you say are the main benefits of living next to your brother?
He's much nicer than I am, much nicer and smarter than I am. He's a great cook. So, if when he barbecues on the weekend, there's always going to be good food. He's very quiet, kind of not a crazy guy like me. So he's a very good neighbor. I can guarantee that. All right.
That was very sweet of you to love on your brother like that. Oh, that's very true too.
It's very true. It's very true. One day, maybe I can get him on the show. But this is not what he does. He doesn't do live shows. He just takes care of his clients, and that's why he's a better realtor than me. So, all right. So, closing thoughts. So we always end the show with this. We got about 7 minutes. So we're like right on time. I didn't mess this up. Peter will be very proud, and thank you guys. Kanaya did say that we're doing great. So even though we don't have our what is Peter, our show dad to keep us straight, we're doing all right. And Jessie is also commenting that she lives in Waimea too, that under 1 million is rare, and it is on county water. Yes, Ashley, you asked about county water. Yeah, it is on county water. Waimea, and the other thing is, if you like colder weather, that's the thing about Waimea, is it's up probably at about 4,000 feet, so it's in the center of the island between the two mountains, and it's always beautiful and green. A little bit more rain than the west side, but it's Paniolo country, ranch country, in the middle of beautiful pastures and Parker Ranch.
Wait, you didn't go the most important detail for both of you guys real fast. How far from Costco?
Oh, I'll let Ronnie go first.
Depends on the traffic. No, it's I'd say it's probably 18 minutes from Costco, but you can walk across the street to Safeway, to Starbucks, to Panda Express, and most importantly, Ross.
Those are important details. That makes that condo more valuable.
No, and you can, I think Kauai has an asset that I don't believe exists throughout the state. It's called Ke'ala Hele Makala'e, means the path by the sea. It's currently 7 miles, and it runs adjacent to this complex, goes all the way up to what we call Donkey Beach. It's a multi-use path, biking. You see people with their dogs. I often walk out there right by the ocean. And the next phase is about to be bid on, and that will go from, Lidgate Park all the way down to Ahukini Landing, all the way down to the airport. So at that point, it'll be 14 miles long. And It's really one of the main assets of the east side. It's really incredible, really and cool. It runs It's right in you can step onto it right in front of the Waipoli Beach Resort.
I think I have someone. I'm so excited. Thanks for the details. All right, Dylan, how far from Costco?
30 minutes. Waimea's a little, it's up north, but still very accessible. So
Same for mine, but 5 minutes from Target and Whole Foods.
love it. All right, now we're definitely on time, 9:55. So our closing thoughts. And one more comment here. TB, I'm not sure who TB is, but he's vouching for my brother. So shout out to you, TB. Thank you for doing that. And here we go. Joan saying I did a great job. Thank you. Wrangler is not as easy as it looks. That's correct. I'm like running the slides and doing all this stuff, and there's a lot going on here. There's no like producer in the background.
You got to be like a video switcher with StreamYard. Yeah.
Yes.
But
all
I
right.
like
So closing thoughts. We got Ashley up first.
Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training. That's why we train so hard. I think for anybody who really prides themselves on whatever industry or study that they have, that this probably resonates with them, because we work so hard to really master whatever our craft is. And when things get tough or when something comes up, the more you train, the more adept you can be under pressure.
100%. I love that. Ronnie, did we get a slide in here for you?
Let's see. I think I'm muted. No, you didn't. But I can say the reason people get good ideas in the shower is because it's the only time during the day when most people are away from screens long enough to think clearly. The lesson is not to take more showers, but rather to make more time to think.
I like it. So you were prepared. That's beautiful.
That was great.
I mean, showers aren't a bad thing either, right? So
no, I like baths better though.
I'll take a hot tub.
It's like motivation, right? Motivation and showers are similar. You should get them often. You should take them often. So you should get a dose of them often. All right. So my closing thought, if I can do the slides right, is meeting you where you're at to get you to where you are going. This was from a meeting I was at earlier in the week in the business context, but I thought about it in the context of the show, and that's really been the mission, right? Is we meet people all over the spectrum in terms of where they're just in the phase of thinking about coming, and they're doing some evaluation, to where they've made the decision to come and now they need some real actual implementation, all the way to the point where we're actually helping them find a home and make that purchase. And then beyond that, where they just need help and support after coming and having a resource. And so I just thought it was a great embodiment of what we do. And I definitely appreciate you guys, Ronnie, Ashley, Heidi, for being a part of it, because we're always trying to meet people where you're at. Doesn't matter where you're at, and we're going to help you to get you to where you're going. And so it's going to be around people like that have that mindset, that are always looking to contribute and provide value. And that's definitely been a huge thing about the growth of this community. And it's cool to now be playing a larger part of it. So
I got one more thought, if you'll allow me.
Yes.
Another interesting idea. You can go to hell without moving an inch. Just focus on what you lack.
There you go.
Can taste heaven without leaving earth. Just rejoice in what you have.
Gratefulness mindset, right? Always.
That kind of ties in Peter for us. Thank you, Ronnie.
Yes, we don't have Peter's proverb today, but he'll be back in 2 weeks. And so that's the final slide here, guys, is we will be back in 2 weeks. We're even talking about potentially going to a weekly show. And so we'll keep you guys posted on that. And the new developments, nothing's going to change significantly, but we definitely want to improve. So if you guys have any ideas or thoughts on content or things that we could provide, we're always open to it, and always appreciate you guys watching. So let's wrap up here and say goodbye. Ronnie, you want to go first?
No, I'll just say mahalo, and thanks for inviting me. I didn't have enough time to notify my dog, so she's letting me know that she needs a little more attention. But it's been a fun hour, and if we can be of service to you here on Kauai, we've got a great group of 5 agents that cover the entire island, and we'd love to talk to you and learn about your interest in the Garden Island.
Love it. Thanks for coming on, Ronnie. Ashley?
Have a great weekend, everyone. Aloha.
Yep. And thank you guys. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Have an awesome weekend.